welcome to Sean's Test Bench. Today I'm doing mounts for the 8-pipe heatsink for the red crossfire. And I figured I'd bring you guys along and let you see how I make my heatsink mounts. Now I got a little notes here because there's no way for me to memorize all this. This heatsink is an 8-pipe heatsink. It's for a Dell XPS630. The part number is a N764D fan heatsink assembly. There's a 90mm fan inside here. It's got the 4-pin connector. So this motherboard CPU header fan header will control the speed. It's almost virtually silent. I've used 3 of these now and they're almost virtually silent. I use these because they're only 120 millimeters tall, so that I don't have any problems putting this in almost all micro ATX and in regular ATX cases. No small form factors that I believe, but it's very small and it's almost silent. It has a nice shroud so you can decorate it, you can paint it, or decal it to accent the theme of the computer you're building. They're 95 millimeters wide by 95 millimeters deep. So they're about the same exact dimensions as a stock cooler. You won't have any issues with tall RAM or making sure that your anything is going to be in the way of it, because it's actually the outside dimensions is the same as the stock cooler. It's only just 120 millimeters tall. So today I'll be removing the original mounts from Intel. This was designed for an Intel socket 775, and I will be making it fit an AMD board, and this is a FM1 motherboard. First of all, what we need to do is get these original mounts off these feet, and by doing that, there's a little screw down in there. You can barely see it, but it's in there, and you take that out. There's one in each one of them. And then just hold the clip so that it can't, so these plastic pieces won't drop out of the holes that they're in. Okay, after them are out, you just push on the plastic tab there and they'll come out. And supposedly this one's going to give me a problem. There it is. They're a little tough to get out, but they come out. I'm really just being careful not to hurt the fins on this heatsink. I'm going to have to straighten some of them out if I damage any of the fins or if they have any marks on them prior to me using it on the build. I'll do my best to straighten all them fins out. I'll show you how to clean this, clean all the silver, and get it ready during the build. It'll all be pre-cleaned before it's assembled. This is what I'm left with. Now if I pull up let me get all this stuff out of my way. If I pull up a AMD motherboard here, you can see a lot of things affect the way you mount a cooler on, depending on where the capacitors are. There's parts that are on these. Now the arrow is going to go towards the rear of the case, so I just center it on there and make sure my plates are not going to get in the way of anything. These plates that I made, I just cut this aluminum on the saw with just scrap aluminum. But as you can see, these were just cut out of a flat piece of aluminum like that, and then I just took a bench grinder and ground the edges off. I filed it, with the file and sanded it up. Now, this is the way I lined it up, as I took a scrap piece like this, approximately 3/4 inches wide. It's 1/8 inch aluminum. And I set these feet on there like this. And then I just took a Sharpie marker and I drew on the sides that needed to be cut away. Then I went to my saw and I just cut a majority of it off with a compound miter saw, and then took it to the bench grinder and ground it back until I had these. And then I took a file, deburred it, took some rough sandpaper and just went over it. These will either be painted to match the theme, or they could just be sanded better to get any marks out of them, and then just cleared and left just bare aluminum color, depending on the color and the theme that you have going on. So these need to be installed on here, and the way I do that is I tap them. I tap holes that'll be right through these feet, and screws will just screw this plate right to these original feet, and then they'll be able to, I'll remove these, which I can do right now, off the back plate. Okay, and then like I said, the arrow, the fan goes towards the back, the header's over here anyhow, and I just set it on there. I center it on the processor. That's more important to me than centering it on the plastic socket itself. On an AMD, the processor's a little bit forward, or towards the back of the case. So with it set in there, I want to make sure that my brackets are not going to interfere with anything when they're in there. And as I could see, this one capacitor is awfully close. So I'm going to need to move it back flush with that. I'm on the processor, dead centered. I can see that. And these are going to have to come out this way because I need the extra room. So these will be installed just like that. I'm going to drill and screw these on, and I'm going to drill holes. I'm going to drill holes right in the front up here to go down through to the back plate. As you can see here, right in between these 2 feet. So let's move this back aside. I'm working on a couple pieces of cardboard. I'm trying not to tear up my new, I got a piece of fake leather to go on the top of this table. Okay. Okay, let's get our pieces laid out here. I want the majority of the metal sticking out over here because the holes for the AMD is out a little further. I'm going to set my feet just like this, right on that bracket, right where I made it to be. I'm going to mark out the holes that are actually in the feet now, just so I know where they're at. And I'm going to want to tap holes for a screw on the far edge, and you'll see why later. Let's do the other side now. Line it up. Okay, and there's marked out. And just like this one, let me see here. I want these holes right here on these edges. So I'm going to cut to a skip. I'm going to clip to a scene where I have a small workbench set up here, and we're going to drill these out. I don't want to drill or do anything with metal shavings on this bench that I assemble computers on. So I'm going to cut to that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm only going to need a couple things here. I have a file, a 6/32 tap, and a drill bit. I forget what size. It's smaller than the tap. It's a one size smaller than the tap, so that the threads can cut a hole. And I have some screws here. So where I marked them out, I'm going to want to drill out first with the drill bit, all 4 of them. Am I in frame? It appears to be. There's a hell of a shadow. Sorry about the lighting. One. Two. Three. 4. And I just take my tap, run it in the drill. Gotta go really slow, but I don't have a handle here. It's at the barn. Just run it in, back it off a little bit. Run it in. And I just made threads in that aluminum. Do it to all 4 screws, all 4 holes. So I just start it, back it off, and run it through again. That should fit 6/32 screws, just like that. And as usual, after you cut or drill, you're going to want to deburr it. Don't worry about the scratches from the file. This will all get sanded before it either gets painted or cleared. One of the two. But take your file and just knock off the edges. So it's deburred. Run a screw through it. Make sure they're all started. Or make sure they all go in without no problems. And they appear they are. They'll go in nice and smooth. Alright, the way I've been doing this first also pushes any shavings out of the way. See, that one's got a little burr in it or something. The screw will knock it out of there. But run the screw, knock any shavings out of the way too before I take it back to the other table. Okay, and that's 2 drilled and tapped, both of them. Let's go back to the table. Okay, as you've seen the clip, I drilled and tapped these. So now what we got to do is install them onto the bottom of this. So get this in right. That goes that way. So I want this way. Got some screws here. Try to keep my hand out of the way, but I want to pull out on this and get it all the way out as far as I can. And snug them screws up. Don't want it to over tighten them. Okay. Do the same for the other side. Set them on there. snug it up. I got one screw that's different here. I'll have to change it out later. One's a Phillips head, the others ain't. Okay, so this is where she stands right now. These will go beside the socket and bolt down. So let's bring that back over here. Here's the orientation here. Just sits right down on the processor and has all this room to move around. Now I can't just mark it anywhere. I have to consider the RAM coming in here on this side. And if you look here on the board, there's actually lines on this board. So all I really got to do is center it on them lines. And I should be centered on my socket, theoretically. So let me move this out here a little bit more. I'm also looking under there and I'm seeing the processor, where it's sitting on the processor. And I'm liking that right there. No, I'm not. Let's come over this way more. Here. This one bracket's actually off a little bit, so just loosen it up, slide it in, tighten it back down. Just got to be snug right now. We're just lining everything up. After I get it where I want it, I'm going to look at the holes in the back plate. I'm going to put a mark and line it up for my distance right to the center of that. Kinda messed that one up. That wasn't very good. Let me stand up and do this. Okay. Now, I also want to take the back plate off of this motherboard and set it on here. That's actually what I needed to do. But I got to make sure that these RAM, that I don't go past my marks on this because it'll slide it forward. I can't just center it. So I want to make sure that I have room for the RAM. It appears right there. It's where that needs to be. Just mark it out and just lay it out like this. It's in the center. Okay, now I got my 4 marks. I'm just going to drill holes through that because these bolts pass through and thread into the back plate. I'm not going to take you back to the other bench because all I'm doing is drilling 4 holes on them spots. I'm pretty sure you could figure out how to do that. And then I'll come back and we'll assemble it on the board and show you the rest of it. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, I drilled them out. I just popped the 4 holes in them that they needed. I'm going to put them back on here. There's a lot of ways you can make mounts for these coolers. This ain't the only way. You could just come up with really any way to get metal or a good solid mount to screw down and hold your heatsink on. if I'm in frame good here, am I? And I'm missing a screw. How could that be? Left it on the cut bench. And a fly bothering me in here. Okay, this will sit on there like this. Got these turned around. I believe I got them turned the wrong way here. I know I'm not even in frame here, am I? One of these had to move back, so let's see which one that is. I'll slide my back plate back underneath. Had screws, don't know what I did with them. Forgot the screws. I'm really not that good at this video stuff. I just want to get these started to see if I need to drill any more, which that one does. And what I'll do is just drill that out a little bit larger. So what I'm doing is getting them all lined up, and then I'll tighten these brackets down, and then it'll hold it the exact way I want it. Which this one's got to come out a little bit, so I'm going to mark this. This screw I want out a little bit more on this side, and then this one here. These look pretty straight. I want this one on this side. What I'm going to do is punch these out one size bigger hole, but I'm going to go ahead and make the bit dig in a little bit higher on this one. And once again, remove the brackets, take them out to the cut bench, and drill these holes out a little bit larger. I'll be right back. Okay, they're re-drilled. I drilled them out a little larger so that, I forget which side I was on. I can tell. This way. Get these screws started again. I'm going to leave these loose because I needed to move it around. Bring the board back over here. I even got this in frame for you guys to see what I'm doing here. I'm just starting these right now. I'm not going to tighten them down or anything. They're just aligning my brackets. Oops, I need to see this first, and then I'll switch it around so you can see it. Okay, essentially what I got going on here, as you could see, the CPU cooler sitting square on the processor. The brackets now that these screws are in to kind of help line it all up, they could be snugged up. Okay, and now these can be tightened down the rest of the way. Which will lift this board up. You can get a slightly smaller screws, but these still are not long as a standoff. They don't stick out as much. You just want it snug. You don't want to break the processor. You just want it snugged up on there and evenly in all four corners. And it'll pull it. These legs got spring tension in them. You won't be able to really damage the processor, I don't think, if you pull it, them screws all the way in. It's not necessary. If you don't like the screws sticking out and you can't get the exact same screws, these are still smaller. They're smaller than that standoff coming in. You can get smaller ones, or you can install this, or a longer one, and put a nut on the end, and that'll take up some space also. Or just whatever it takes to get it all lined up. Most likely I'm going to go back and get the next size smaller screws for this before it's assembled in the red crossbar. But as you see, that's installed. It's squared on the socket. I don't know if the camera can let you see good. And that's how I make an Intel CPU cooler fit an AMD board. And you can do this with about anything if you just study how it's done. Now I had this one up here to show you. This outperforms this, and this is supposed to be a good stock cooler, but and they say this is a 4 heat pipe, so this must be an 8. I wasn't sure if it's considered 4 or 8, but that's a solid copper base also. But these are better than just the fan and the aluminum heat sinks, and this is better than that and quieter. This one's a lot quieter than that one. So this will go right here on the board and plug in. And that's how I make an Intel CPU cooler fit an AMD board. Thank you for watching.